What if I told you that the most powerful man in human history never called himself an emperor? That he built an empire that lasted over 1,000 years by publicly refusing power while secretly consolidating it? This is the story of how Augustus Caesar pulled off the greatest political con job in history. When Octavian walked into the Roman Senate on January 13th, 27 BCE, he wasn't just another politician making promises. He was the adopted son of Julius Caesar, fresh from winning the last civil war that had torn the Republic apart. What happened next would change the course of human civilization forever. Picture this. The most powerful man in the known world stands before Rome's highest governing body and does something unthinkable. He gives up his power. Or does he? The truth behind Augustus's rise reveals a master manipulator who understood something most rulers never grasp. True power isn't about what you take. It's about what people give you willingly. The events leading to that fateful January day weren't as dramatic as ancient historians would have us believe. What Cassius Dio described as a spontaneous speech where Octavian humbly relinquished his powers was actually the culmination of a carefully orchestrated political theater that had been playing out for months. Throughout 28 BCE, Octavian had been busy. While Rome slept, he was reshaping the very foundations of power. He elevated new patrician families, families that owed their status entirely to him. He restored vacant priesthoods and filled them with his supporters. He appointed senators who would remember exactly who had given them their positions. But here's where Augustus showed his genius. He issued an edict nullifying any emergency powers granted during the civil wars that violated Roman law. Sounds noble, right? Wrong. This legal sleight of hand allowed him to escape unfulfilled promises while keeping every ounce of power the Senate had legitimately granted him. When January 13th arrived, the Senate's spontaneous offer of power and Augustus's reluctant acceptance was pure theater. Every senator in that room was playing their predetermined role in a script Augustus had written months earlier. The so-called concessions were brilliant. Augustus kept his consulship and his position as princeps senatus, first among senators. More importantly, he retained proconsular imperium over Gaul, Spain, Syria, and Egypt. Do you know what that meant? Control over 20 of Rome's 27 legions. He could raise veteran armies from 30 other legions he'd settled across the empire whenever he wanted. 3 days later came the masterstroke. When offered the name Romulus, founder of Rome, Augustus refused it. Kings were despised in Rome, he said. Instead, he accepted a new title, Augustus, meaning the illustrious one. It sounded religious, harmless even, but it placed him at the head of Rome's religious hierarchy while avoiding any monarchical implications. They granted him the corona civica, the laurel wreath for saving Roman citizens. The irony was bitter. This same man had ordered massacres during the civil wars. Yet the Senate conceded, because what choice did they have? But here's what's fascinating. None of this made Augustus an emperor. He was creating something entirely new, a position that looked republican but functioned as absolute rule. The years following the first settlement revealed Augustus's true nature. Two of his closest allies discovered just how dangerous his friendship could be. Gaius Cornelius Gallus made a fatal error. Augustus's representative in Egypt, he allowed the Egyptians to erect statues celebrating his achievements. He even had his deeds inscribed on the pyramids themselves. Augustus's response was swift and brutal. Gallus was stripped of everything and replaced immediately. Marcus Licinius Crassus learned a similar lesson. When he tried to dedicate enemy armor to Jupiter's temple, an honor that would overshadow Augustus, he found himself permitted a triumph, but banned from ever holding significant office again. The message was clear: shine, but never outshine the master. By 23 BCE, Augustus faced his first real crisis. His co-consul Terentius Vero Murena had grown suspicious of Augustus's nepotism, particularly his favoritism toward his nephew Marcellus. During the trial of Marcus Primus, Augustus appeared uninvited. When questioned about his presence, he claimed it was for the public welfare. The crowd jeered, and Augustus's reputation suffered. But Murena pushed too far. He organized a conspiracy against Augustus. The details are lost to history, but the outcome isn't. Murena and his conspirators were executed. A second conspiracy by Ignatius Rufus met the same fate. Augustus was learning that ruling meant killing, even former allies. Then fate intervened in the most human way possible. In late spring 23 BCE, both Augustus and Marcellus fell gravely ill. Augustus, believing he was dying, made a decision that saved his political career. He called his most trusted advisors to his bedside. To Marcus Agrippa, his right-hand man, he gave his signet ring, the symbol of executive power. But here's the genius move. To Calpurnius Piso, a dedicated Republican who had supported Caesar's assassins, he handed control of the military rosters and state finances. This single act rehabilitated Augustus's image overnight. Here was proof that he truly intended to preserve the Republic, even in death. When Augustus recovered, he implemented the second settlement. He gave up the consulship but received something far more valuable: enhanced proconsular authority that he could exercise even within Rome itself, plus the powers of a tribune of the plebs. This gave him the right to convene the Senate, veto any decision, preside over elections, and speak first at every session. Critics claimed the food shortage of 22 BCE was Augustus's own doing, a manufactured crisis to grab more power. Whether true or not, Augustus played it perfectly. He dramatically tore his clothes in the Senate, baring his chest and declaring he'd rather die than become dictator. The performance won him control of Rome's food supply and censorial powers to edit the Senate's membership. The following years saw Augustus navigate increasingly violent political chaos. When he declined the consulship in 21 BCE, riots erupted. Roman citizens literally fought in the streets over consular elections. Augustus had to personally select and appoint consuls to restore order. But Augustus was playing a longer game. In 19 BCE, he ended the tradition of proconsular triumphs, reserving them only for his family members. Every military victory would now be celebrated in Augustus's name as protector of Rome. He was systematically erasing the boundary between the state and himself. The real transformation came in 18 BCE, when Augustus's 10-year grant of authority expired. The Senate renewed it for 5 years, establishing a precedent that would outlast Augustus by centuries. As long as there was trouble on the frontiers, and there would always be trouble somewhere in the vast Roman territories, Augustus could justify renewal of his extraordinary powers. That same year, Augustus and Agrippa undertook a massive purge of the Senate. They raised the minimum wealth requirement from 400,000 to 1 million sesterces and reduced eligible families to just 600. When senators tried to corrupt the lottery system Augustus had devised, he abandoned it entirely and personally selected which families could remain in the Senate. The message was unmistakable. Augustus alone would determine who held power in Rome. But Augustus understood that power without legitimacy is tyranny, and tyranny breeds rebellion. So he expanded certain Senate powers, creating commissions to handle imperial bureaucracy. He established a select committee of senior senators to serve as his advisory council, rotating membership to prevent the formation of opposition blocs. When his daughter Julia's scandals erupted in 2 BCE, Augustus used the crisis to grant the Senate judicial authority over major political crimes. It seemed like expanded power for senators, but it actually gave Augustus legal precedent for exile by imperial edict, a power he'd use against the poet Ovid and countless others. Augustus's religious role completed his transformation from politician to institution. The Ludi Secularis of 17 BCE declared the beginning of a new age with Augustus as its herald. When he became Pontifex Maximus in 12 BCE, Romans from across Italy flocked to Rome, to elect their closest representative to the gods. He restored ancient priesthoods vacant since the Republic's darkest days and moved the pontifex's residence to his own palatial estate. His wife Livia became keeper of Vesta's sacred flame, symbolically uniting Augustus's secular authority with Rome's religious heart. The final piece fell into place on February 5th, 2 BCE, when Augustus received the title Pater Patriae, Father of the Country. Only 3 men before him had held this honor: Camillus, Cicero, and Julius Caesar. Augustus considered it his greatest achievement, ending his own memoir at this moment. But here's what made Augustus's system so brilliant and so dangerous. He created the illusion of republican government while wielding imperial power. He never abolished the Senate or declared himself king. Instead, he made every expansion of his authority seem like a reluctant response to crisis or public demand. Augustus surrounded himself with supporters drawn from across the empire, diversifying Rome's leadership while ensuring their loyalty to him personally. These men would become the backbone of imperial administration, their careers and fortunes tied directly to Augustus's continued success. What Augustus built wasn't just personal power. It was a system that could outlast him. The principate he established would govern the Roman world for centuries, providing stability and prosperity that the Republic's final decades had destroyed. This wasn't the brutal tyranny of a conqueror, but the sophisticated authoritarianism of a political genius who understood that the best chains are the ones people forge for themselves. Augustus didn't seize power, he made Romans beg him to take it. And that, perhaps, is the most terrifying lesson of all.